Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here and to learn from all of you and bring back to Switzerland visions which I hear and feel here in Ireland. I want to show you a little bit where we stand in Switzerland. Future Earth in Switzerland. It's a very essential step, and we all believe in it in Switzerland. We had last year, 1.5 years ago, the whole academy had their retreat dedicated to Future Earth. Essentially, the whole academy, the engineers, the physicists, the chemists, all are believing in this important next step, bringing together the international programs into a united new form and integrating it with the stakeholder needs and bring that together. So we very much stand behind that. It's all our committees are reflecting on it. However, we also see the science community needs time to adjust. It's something new. Stakeholder involvement, engagement with stakeholder, it's not something which a chemist is used to do, and he maybe even doesn't need to do it because it can be on different levels. It's not every scientist who has to do all those activities. But where are the challenges? We had already 1997, and in fact the year before I coordinated that activity. We asked the scientists, the science community, how do you see the big challenges for science within the next 50 years? We called it Visions by Swiss Researchers. And one of the essential things was we have several components where science can provide input to society. It's the systems knowledge about how things work, how the system Earth is functioning. Then target knowledge. Where do we want to go? It's not just a 2-degree target of something on climate. It's much more. It's how do we bring the world into a peaceful world in 50 or 100 years? How do we deal with resources? Where are the big challenges where we need to think today that we deliver that the resources which are urgently needed in 50 or 100 years are still there, and many other things. Quality of life as probably the key element that future communities, future societies can still have a good quality of life. And then another part, how to transform our system of today into the one of we have as a target it identified for tomorrow. Now, the first system knowledge, and we have far too much spent up to now on system knowledge, to some degree correct. Let's think about the climate issue, climate change. Of course, first you have to make sure that we, the science communities, believe that humanities is a key factor. And France has shown these different curves. We have at all places to make sure that humanities are the key factor in it, and it's not something else which acts. So, but in most cases that's very clear, and therefore the other components need to be dealt with by science much more clearly. And it's obvious, target knowledge and transformation knowledge cannot be done by the science community by itself. It needs stakeholders, it needs the involvement of the community. Co-development of research, co-production means also co-ownership. And I think that's the essential part, that it's co-owned by the society, by the stakeholders. They are not just the receivers of the results, but they are co-owners of these results. Now, Future Earth. Swiss experience with Future Earth. Of course, with the program Future Earth, we don't have that much experience because it's a starting program. But we have a lot of experience with the former programs, which France has pointed out the development. And maybe if you look at these two triangles, the past programs, there were rather triangles. The red one, curiosity-driven research, was in the heart of it. Of course, that's what it was, because first you have to find out where the key factors are, where change happening, where there are the challenges, the underpinning science, and I think that's also where a lot of science has been dealt with, and it reaches out up to the policy stakeholder, but it's rather a delivering thing, as France has shown. We find out and we deliver, and you should listen and then act. I think what Future Earth, and we all recognize that as the key part, is bringing is this additional triangle which listens to the stakeholders, to the policy, and adds these elements, transdisciplinary research. Of course, as research, it's already ongoing in many parts of Europe, of the world. However, bringing that together and really acting on it, that's a big challenge. And we have faced that. We had two big programs, 12-year programs, well-funded. One, the red one, National Competence Center for Climate. And it reached out to stakeholders. It had involved some from reinsurance industry, from the Met Office, from the federal agencies, some partners, but it's rather a science-driven part. And then we had another one, the National Competence Center for North-South, partnership with developing countries. It was a partnership. The National Science Foundation funded it, the Swiss part of research, and the development agency funded, and it's a substantial funding, I think more than 10, 15 million euros, was coming from the development agencies. They funded the development, the scientists from the developing world to work together on projects in different areas around the world. These two programs never could come together and work together. The science approach was too different. The culture was at the moment still too different. The place-based and the system-centered approaches, they didn't fit. We tried from Proclaim. We organized workshops and encouraged them to define projects working together, but the culture was too different. So that's the negative side, where we feel there's a lot to do, even so we work since many years. So they all believe, yes, it has to be done, but on the table, when it comes to the collaboration, at least in these big programs, it really didn't fly. It's unfortunate. Now, what I would like to point out, and Tim, you have stressed that, there is so many young students at the universities. It's not just the research programs, it's the students. And they work in the different disciplines. They are trained in chemistry, in physics, in sociology, whatever, medicine. They should have in their backpack, they should have the vision that there is a big challenge, and that's Future Earth, our future. And with that in mind, they should go out and do whatever they do in our society, in the industry, in the governmental agencies, and so on, in policy. So I think we have to put into their heart what you stressed, that need to act and not do their work in their profession well, but always in mind that there is a big challenge for our world. Now, I think it's important to see we are not, the science cannot do everything. Knowledge is only one part for action. There is the perception of the society, there is the value system of the society, and all form that spirit and that intuition and that body feeling which are in the heart of when we act. And the social conditions in addition, which means there are national differences, there are regional differences, and it's not one solution. There are many solutions which bring together then, which are needed for action, and so action cannot be one for the whole world. Very brief, to be a little bit more concrete about the challenges, it's climate change mitigation, different sectors in Switzerland, 30% CO2 emissions mobility, 30% buildings, 20% industry, and agriculture 10%. These are about the dominant thing, contributions. In many parts of the world, it's about similar, except for electricity. In Switzerland, electricity is only 3%. It's only 3% because we have 60% hydropower and 40% nuclear. This is a big challenge. Let's look at Germany, just our neighbor nation. They don't have the mountains as a big part, so their hydropower is not as abundantly available. They have 50% of their CO2 emissions is from electricity production, compared to 3% in Switzerland. And now, if you want to reduce, and that's the policy thing, we want to reduce our CO2 emissions. Well, if we do it in Switzerland, if we want to, and there is a decision, we want to go away with nuclear. If we replace nuclear by gas, we add 20% of CO2 emissions. If Germany replaces coal, which is their major thing, by gas, they reduce their emissions by 20%. That just wants to show, while we are neighboring countries, our policy approach and our way we have to convince our society is completely different. And it can be, and now I would like to bring it back to from this national view to the global view again. If you look at the globe, the emissions on the left-hand graph, you see the population increase of the world and of Switzerland. Both increase, except only every 1,000th person in the world is living in Switzerland. It's quite a bit, but still only it's a 1 to 1,000 ratio. And if you look at the total emissions to the left today and the target for a 2-degree target, the emission path, it's quite similar. It's quite a similar path we have to take. And to the right, the CO2 emission by capita, by person, it's in fact about the same. So it's a challenge for the world, and it's a challenge for the different nations. And the different nations have some different flavors, but a lot in common. And this is a pledge for the importance of the big world coordination, but also for that we have to reflect on the national stakeholders. Now, Future Earth adds many additional challenges, and this climate example is just one. There is biodiversity, depletion of resources, unemployment, economic competitiveness, regional and sectoral needs and pressures. So, in fact, Future Earth is much more than just one of those things. Now, what do we do in Switzerland? Well, along the line which Tim has already pointed out, it's not one solution. There is many activities, and I feel that the academies can do a lot in that if it's a network and maybe a coordination center of a network. However, and not just a committee. A committee is 10 people. They will not do a lot. It needs more. What we do with ProClim and the Advisory Body on Climate Change, OCCC, we act within the science community to the left bottom with services, for example, workshops on new topics, IPCC calls, which we deal with for the federal agency. Then to the right, the international programs bring the scientists into the international programs, encourage them to be part, encourage to become secretaries of core project offices and so on. And then on top, the parliament, the government, and then the media and the public. For example, assessment reports broken down on Swiss. We do that at the moment for IPCC, broken down, much more easier understandable IPCC synthesis for Switzerland. Parliamentary meeting, last week the 63rd parliamentary meeting we organized with parliamentarians, where we bring scientists into interaction with the parliamentarians in open discussion. Then facts and figures with the media, with the industry. For example, we advise, we interact very heavily with the reinsurance industry. And of course, then IPCC and the world programs. It's a whole activity part where we are also funded to half of our money comes from the federal agencies, Met Office, Environmental Office, and we do work together with them. Essentially, the stakeholder science dialogue for these different offices. And that brings always scientists together with stakeholders. A similar partnership, that was ProClim, but another one is we have 4 others. We have the Biodiversity Forum. ProClim has 4 full-time scientists. Then the Biodiversity Forum, about 3. Then we have the Transdisciplinary Network, that's maybe 2 persons, 1.5. And then Network for Alpine Research are also about 2 full-time scientists. So we are very well funded by the academies and by the federal agencies who feel that it's important to collaborate with us. Now, that's the last slide. Plans to stimulate cooperation with Future Earth projects. Well, how do we plan to do that? We will continue to sponsor Switzerland core project offices of special relevance for the Swiss science community, and of course support them in the transition to Future Earth, and I think that's very important. Encourage and advertise Future Earth within the science community and the federal agencies. Just yesterday, a workshop together with Met Office and the Federal Agency of the Environment, where we brought in stakeholders and support the federal agencies' program, a pilot program on research in adaptation in that case. And we essentially bring in the scientists to help them to look in their project into the future, to bring in the global change aspects. And there are 10 scientists from different parts of Switzerland. So that now National Committee, well, as you have seen, we have 4 platforms or several platforms. So we organize this year a workshop with the core project SSC members of Switzerland in the international programs, and our Swiss networks to ask ourselves, what is the best way? Because we have these structures with advisory boards and well-funded platforms. What can a committee do? Shall it be a committee, or what form? Or do we reunite ourselves into one body? This is the question we reflect. But we are part of Future Earth, but we are not yet a committee in the name committee, because we feel that's not enough. We need more. The needs, clear labeling of the core projects and their events with Future Earth, because we want to sell Future Earth to the science community. There are hundreds of international events, but we want to select the Future Earth events and not just what's going on at different places in the world. And so the labeling with the Future Earth label would be, that's very important, that's very soon on all activities of Future Earth. We feel that that's very important. That's it. And thank you very much.
Thank you.